If you feel like you're completely stuck just playing the same old licks, or that whenever you play it just doesn't sound as musical as the people that you look up to, then this is the video series that's going to change all that. Over the coming weeks, I'm going to take you through a series of the only video lessons that you will ever need in order to be able to master rock guitar soloing. And all of this starts and ends with 3 key areas. Number 1 is fretboard skills. Without knowing where all of your musical devices live on the fretboard, you're never going to be able to make actual music with them. Number 2 is technique. Now, even if you don't want to be a shredder, absolutely everybody struggles with technique. Technique at the end of the day is just a vehicle for getting your musical ideas out there. So with poor technique, you're always going to struggle. Number 3 is developing musical vocabulary. Most people will end up learning scales or nicking ideas off of other guitar players, YouTube videos, etc. But what they don't develop is their own things to say on the instrument, and we're going to look at solving that problem. In this series of videos, I'm going to be breaking all of this down for you into manageable lessons and also giving you play along videos as well, so that you can actually apply all of the stuff that you're learning. Now, we're going to kick this series off by unlocking the CAGED system and using the 5 minor pentatonic shapes. Most guitar players get stuck only using one shape of the minor pentatonic, and that absolutely kills their progress. The 5 pentatonic forms are the foundation of almost every great guitar solo that you've ever loved. Whether it's Hendrix, Page, Steve Vai or Guthrie Govan, absolutely every top rock guitar player uses these 5 shapes. Once you understand this 5 position framework, you'll be able to take it even further than pentatonics to be able to use things like arpeggios and triads to develop a completely holistic rock guitar sound. If you want to go further and deeper on the subjects that I'm going to be talking about here on these YouTube videos, check out the links in the description box below, where you can get access to a whole host of educational materials at my online learning platform, Cutting Edge Guitar. So whether you've been stuck not knowing what you're playing for years, or you just want to become more fluent across the fretboard, this is going to be the series for you. So what we're going to do to kick it off right now is introduce you properly to the CAGED system and start understanding this 5 position system. So let's get right into it. Okay, guitar players, before we can get stuck right into what I want to do here with the Cutting Edge Guitar Academy content for real, we need a little bit of back information before we can really launch into this. And what we've got to talk about here is the CAGED system, what it is, how it works, how it maps on the fretboard. There may be a lot of you that already know this, but there'll be some students that don't know this. We need to recap it for those purposes so that everyone can be on the same page. So first things first, your CAGED system. It's basically a system of understanding the guitar fretboard that is based on the open shapes of a C chord, an A chord, a G chord, an E chord, and a D chord. So at the very least, first things first, you need to make sure that you know those open position chords. I would imagine most of you here do, but if not, it is a C chord. And if you don't know these, you will find all of this open chord content in my beginners program here at Cutting Edge Guitar. This is a beginner concept. So an A chord, a G chord, an E chord, and finally a D chord. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the 5 shapes of those open chords and use them as a way to play one key but in 5 positions along the neck. If that sounds confusing, this is how your capo works, okay? So whenever you put a capo, let's say you've got a capo that you're going to put on your 5th fret, and your chord chart says play a C chord, you'll be playing a shape that looks like this next door to the capo. This is how the CAGED system is basically going to work. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to bring in some diagrams and talk about this. So the CAGED system here, what you can see in the fretboard diagram and then what I'm playing on the guitar, this is a C major chord. So that's our C chord in the open position. Now if I look at the next fretboard diagram on this PDF that I've got here, What this is, it's a bar chord. Most of you will know and understand bar chords, I would have thought, okay? So, what we have here is still a C major chord. It's a C bar chord at the 3rd fret. I'm using my 1st finger and 3rd finger. But what we actually have here is what we would call a C chord, but in the A shape, because what we can see, if I'm just going to bring in my cursor, what we can see in this little bar here, which is what my 3rd finger is doing on the guitar here, if I take that down here, it's an open A chord, right? So we're saying that this is a C chord, but in the A shape, okay? And where it has to start is at the 3rd fret, where my last shape took off. So that's the shape we've got there. This one basically plugs into it, like you're doing a jigsaw puzzle, okay? Now, the next shape along, this starts, if you look at these two here, where this one finished off up at the 5th fret, right? As we go across here, this one is starting at the 5th fret, and we've got our 2nd, 3rd and 4th fingers. Okay, so that the 3rd finger is at the 8th fret, 2nd finger is at the 7th fret, etc. So this is now what we would call a C chord. It's still a C chord because the notes that are in it are C, E, G, C, E, G, C. We've got a C major chord here, but it's in the G shape, because if I was to take that shape down to the open position, it looks like an open G chord. Okay. Now if we go along to the next one, starting at the 8th fret, because again, like the jigsaw puzzle, these all have to plug into each other. This one is a C major chord, but in the E shape, okay? Because if I take this shape down here, it looks like an open E chord. Now anyone who's playing this, oops, I played at the wrong fret. Anyone who's playing this will probably recognise that as just a standard C bar chord. So this shape and this shape are used very, very commonly. Okay. And if I go along to the next shape here, this one is a C chord, but in a shape that looks like an open D chord. Okay, so what we've got there with the CAGED system is basically that those shapes of C, A, G, E and D in my open position, those shapes, they're not C, A, G, E and D chords when we move them along the neck, but they're keeping those shapes allow me to play a C major chord in 5 different positions with that same thinking as your capo mentality, okay? Now, what I want to talk about here, the next thing, is the numerical system for the CAGED system, because where everyone goes wrong with this, they start looking at it as in, oh, okay, so C chord C shape, C chord A shape, like that's very confusing terminology. So what we're now going to look at is reordering this into EDCAG, okay? So by reordering this into EDCAG, what I'm now going to play for you is an open E chord. And that's what you see in the fretboard diagram underneath me here. So you've got an E major chord, okay? Now if I go to the next position along, look at the next position along in this now becomes an E chord in its D shape, okay? We go along to the next position again after that, and we have an E chord in its C shape. Then we have an E chord in its A shape. And then lastly, we have an E chord in its G shape. However, I think that is a terminology that leaves a lot of people confused about the CAGED system. So, the better way to refer to this, anything that you look at that is E shape, okay, this shape here, you should refer to this as shape 1 or position 1 or zone 1, whatever you want to call it from the CAGED system, but it's shape number 1, okay? Zone 1. Some people like to think of CAGED areas as zones on the guitar. Some people talk about it as positions, okay? Shape 1. So when you go along to this now, this will be referred to as an E chord in shape 2. Then when we have this is an E chord in shape 3. And then we have this, which is an E chord in shape 4. And then we have this, which is an E chord in shape 5. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to change this to the key of A major. Okay, now when you see how I've labelled this one up, when I play an A major bar chord at the 5th fret here, the standard bar chord that you're all probably used to, this is now being referred to as an A major chord position 1 in brackets E shape. Okay, so this is shape 1 or position 1 for an A major chord. Okay, so of course when I go along to the next shape, this would be an A major chord in shape 2. Yes, it looks like a open D chord, but this is shape 2 of A major. Okay, then the next one along, shape 3 of A major. Yes, looks like an open C chord, but you need to refer to this and think of this as shape 3. Okay, then we've got shape 4, which looks like the open A chord, but it's shape 4 or zone 4 or position 4 for the key of A. And then finally we will have shape 5. It's a bit of a stretch and a bit of a squeeze all the way up here, which you could take that down an octave. It's still the same notes, the same positions, etc. But that's the way that the CAGED system will map. Okay, and this is completely consistent for all the various different keys. So if I wanted to transpose this from the key of A to say the key of G, all I would do is take that shape and then move it down 2 frets to where I've got a G root note. There's my G major chord. Okay, so then of course I'd have a G in shape 2, I'd have G in shape 3, I'd have G in shape 4, G in shape 5. It's consistent for every key. Okay, now for anyone who wants more info on this, I have another course product here at Cutting Edge Guitar that is called the Advancing Guitarist course, where I go really in depth with it. Something that's very, very important to know is with each shape you need to know where the root notes are. What we're going to do with the Cutting Edge Guitar Academy here, as we start populating the CAGED system areas in our fretboard skills classes, we'll be talking about that from session to session. The one final thing I do want to quickly just talk you through here is the minor chord system as well. You don't just have major, you have minor chord systems. So the A minor chord position 1 E shape is exactly the same concept as what we'd had before. Imagine that your first finger looks like a capo. These 2 fingers playing the notes next door, they look like the open E minor chord shape, which is why people refer to it as the E shape. For me, I think it's much more sensible to just refer to this shape here as an A minor chord in shape 1. And it doesn't matter where you would put that on the guitar and in what key you're putting it in, that shape is shape 1. So if I moved it to here, it's F sharp minor shape 1. If I moved it up here, it's B flat minor shape 1. If I moved it to here, it's D minor shape 1. How I know this, that shape is always a minor chord shape. The key, well, the first note that you're playing of the shape is your root note, so that tells you what key you're in. Okay, now for each different shape, what you will need to learn is the root note positions. Again, in our fretboard skills classes, as we're going ahead, we will be looking at all of this. But what you can see on the screen in front of you right now, this shape here, this is an A minor chord in position 2 or shape 2. Looks like, funnily enough, an open D minor chord. Okay, we've then also got our shape 3. So here's your A minor chord in shape 3, looks like this. Then you've got your A minor chord in shape 4. And then finally in shape 5. Looks like this. Very hard to actually play that up here on the guitar. It'd be hard on the camera angles for you to see. Try and get my fingers out, my ring finger out the way so you can actually see what I'm doing. But I'm doing that with 4th, 2nd and 1st finger. If I take it down an octave, it's much easier to play. But guys, that is basically the overview of the CAGED system. As I say, if you want to see more about the CAGED system and have more in-depth tutorials on that, the Advancing Guitarist course goes really in depth about the CAGED system. But what we're going to do in the Fretboard skills classes going forward is we're going to really break that down and dive deep into the CAGED system and build up using that as like a platform that we're going to build onto it, scales, arpeggios, triads, and then build technique and licks and everything all around it, and we'll be going from there. So in your next class after this, what we're going to start looking at is something that we're going to be doing in shape 1 and staying in that key of A minor. So we'll be going through that next. So I'll see you in the next lesson.